Right, we're live. Let's see. There's a bit of a delay in me pressing live and this actually coming through on any other platforms. I guess maybe 10, 15 seconds or so. So if this is coming up, bear with me. I just want to check to see that it's coming through properly just on my LinkedIn profile here. If anyone is catching this, just let us know if you're there. Comment, a thumbs up, something to let me know that this is working. There we go. Just jumped onto LinkedIn and it seems to be coming through. There it is. Is it there? Hello. It's a bit of a lag. Can anyone let me know? Can you just drop a comment to let me know if you can see this and if it's coming through okay? There we go. Looks to be working all right. I haven't been on live for a little while, so bear with me as I try to get it going. Wasn't sure that it would still actually work. Thank you for everyone that's streaming in, jumping in and having a watch. So live across LinkedIn, Facebook and YouTube. Let me know you're there. I can't actually see who's watching. I can see a number, but don't know who's actually there. So let us know. Thank you. There's a few comments there. 40, Andrew, Jared, all good. All right, let's kick on with it. So, so I posted the other day on my LinkedIn and a few other places. I shared it to say that I've been doing a lot of work really, the last 6 months or so. Some of you that may watch this might actually be clients and see this yourself, but a lot of work with people that are around 40, early 40s, and looking at what's next. And so I've put together a few slides here. There's a whole lot of other bit that goes into this work that we tend to do, but really kind of knuckling down to the 3 or 4 different areas around the wealth accumulation, the strategies, the strategies and processes and things that we're putting in place to kind of help push people forward, keep them accountable, keep them active, and keep them moving. So I've got a few slides here. I'll share it up. Just let me see the layout. Yeah, there we go. If I make myself a bit smaller and the slides a bit bigger, that will hopefully come through okay and you can see it. So as I've said there, early 40s, can we or should we be doing more? The answer to the can we is probably yes. The answer to the should we is it depends. Depends who you are, depends where you're at, depends what you want to do, depends what your priorities are. But can we? The answer's probably yes. So what I'm about to go through here is it's some advice that I've delivered to a range of different clients, number of different clients, but all fit a similar kind of profile. I was trying to find the right word, the demographic description, the profile of what these people kind of look like, what these couples, what these individuals, what these families, what these households look like. And so if we start with, they're all tend to be early 40s, as I said, settled into their forever home. So when I'm talking about forever home, I mean they've done the upgrade. It's quite common for people to buy their first home, they stay there for a period of time, and then they eventually upgrade to something bigger. Maybe that upgrades some renovations to their own home to make it bigger, double story, add some extra bedrooms, extra bathroom, whatever it is. But that upgrade period is behind them, whether it's the bigger house, whether it's the renovations. As I said, that type of work is behind them and they're settled there. They're saying, this is home, this is where we're staying, we're going to be here for the next 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. As it says there a little bit further on, kids are settled into school. So if these people have kids, if it's a couple, maybe it's a single and they don't, maybe they don't want kids. But if they've got kids, they're kind of settled into schools, they're settled into the local area, they're playing the sports, and that's home. They've got some roots there. The mortgage is kind of either fully paid off or well and truly under control. So when I go through to some of the next slides, part of what I'm going to go through probably isn't terribly appropriate for you if you still have a mortgage, if it's still big, if you're still making the monthly repayments and it's a bit of a stretch. That's probably not a great idea to be doing some of the strategies that I've got going forward, and maybe you're a step earlier in the process of getting towards being in this position of this kind of typical profile of the types of clients that I've been working with lately. So mortgage is paid off or well and truly under control. A lot of people in their early 40s have made some really significant inroads into their mortgage. Maybe it's just through keeping their spending and things under control, they've managed to pay it off. Or more often is the case, the mortgage is fully offset. Maybe they've sold the property, maybe they've sold the business, maybe they've inherited some money, but some way, shape or form, the mortgage is under control. If it's not fully paid off, there might be hundreds of thousands of dollars in offset accounts. So a lot of people that I've been dealing with or working with in the last 6 to 12 months, that it might have a home mortgage of $600, $800 million plus. They might have these big mortgages, but there's hundreds of thousands of dollars in offset accounts. It might be 200, there might be 600, there might be $1 million or more sitting in offset accounts. So the drain of the monthly having to pay the mortgage isn't quite a big deal. Household incomes typically around that $300,000 mark or above. Maybe that's an individual working. Maybe that's a higher income earner and a lower income earner. Maybe they're earning the same, but we're kind of talking 300,000 plus. At that level with the mortgage under control, there's often a fair bit of surplus cash around. So they're in a position where we're saying life's comfortable, but what's next? We don't want to just cruise along. The last 5 or 10 years have gone by in a flash. We can only imagine what the next 15 years is going to go by in. And by that time, we're nearly 60 and kind of wondering where's the time gone and what have we done? Have we made the best use of that time moving forward? Now, this typical client that I've been dealing with or working with them just working alone, they'll probably likely accumulate more than $1 million in superannuation. If it's an individual, if it's a couple, it's probably more. Might be looking at $1.5 million just by working. Now, that's a fair bit of money, obviously, but relative to the lifestyle that these households are typically living at the moment, it's not enough. So these households that are earning $300,000 a year plus, typically they're spending maybe $10,000 to $15,000 a month living. Part of that's maybe a mortgage, part of that's maybe school fees and helping raise children and those kind of things. So when you get to retirement, they might not spend quite that much, but they're certainly not spending $5,000 a month. They're not going to be retiring on $5,000 a month. They're aspiring to retire on an income of maybe $10,000 to $15,000 a month. And $1 to $1.5 million in superannuation is not going to cut it. That's not going to cut it today if they were 60 years old and retiring with $1.5 million wanting to live off $10,000 or $15,000 a month. That's not enough now, let alone factoring in 15 years worth of inflation into the mix. It's not going to be anywhere near enough. So what do we do? What do we do? What are the steps? So the next few slides, there's not too many here, but the next few slides are a high level look at what are some of the things that we're doing. So we start with super. If mortgage is under control, someone's in their early 40s, it's still a number of years away until they can access their super, but it's not that far away. And from a superannuation point of view, what we're looking at here is trying to minimize tax. So one of the biggest complaints that people in this kind of income bracket, this stage of life have is they feel like they're paying a whole lot of money in tax. So one of the best ways that we can look to try and reduce that tax somewhat is by maximizing super contributions. So as I've said there's maximizing contributions going forward. So that's using the caps as they stand, the annual caps of pre-tax contributions that you could be making going forward. Now, if these household incomes of $300,000 or more, chances are there's probably one, if not two people in there earning $150,000, $200,000 a year plus. Super contributions on that are going to take them pretty close to the annual cap. So we might be talking $5,000, $10,000 a year at max in terms of a salary sacrifice arrangement to get them to the cap. Because they're these higher income earners, the money's coming out pre-tax. The after-tax effect is a few $100s a month. You barely notice it. So organising some salary sacrifice arrangements to get that going kind of now, and using the caps going forward. Then, as I've shared a few different videos on some different platforms, there's some capacity to go backwards. So not only maximising contributions going forwards, we can maximise some of these contributions going backwards. There's this thing called catch-up concessional contributions. These higher income earners, often is the case, the higher income earner, if it's a couple's, probably getting close to about $500,000 in superannuation by their kind of early to mid 40s. If they've been working in some type of typically corporate job, earning $100,000, $150,000 a year for the last 10 years or more, they're probably getting close to $500,000 in super, is often my experience. $500,000 in super is a bit of a trigger point. Once you go past $500,000 in super, you can't use these catch-up, or you can't go back and use the catch-up contribution limits. So it's about that time in the early 40s where I'm recommending that these clients are taking a lump sum of money out of their offset account and using up the catch-up contributions. They're claiming a tax deduction this year. But what that means is that we're going back to the financial year 18-19, and then up until now, that we're making sure they've used up all of their pre-tax contributions up until then, manufacturing some tax deductions, and getting some more money into super, which will be a benefit later on. The next one there about splitting contributions. So particularly if you've got a household where there's a higher income earner and a lower income earner, as is often the case, there's discrepancy in superannuation balances. If we're maximising super contributions, in terms of the maximising contributions going forward, we'll always start with the higher income earner first. You get the better bang for your buck from a tax point of view from the higher income earner. If the household cash flow will allow, we'll then look at the lower income earner. But we start with the higher income earner, and sometimes we get to both that are maximising the contributions going forward. But overlaying this splitting, contribution splitting. So what we're doing there is we're moving money from the higher income earners super balance to the lower income earners super balance. What we're trying to do is even them out. Why does that matter? It doesn't really make too much a difference now when you're in your early 40s, but you do some projecting out until what these balances might get to with these increased contributions by the time someone's 60. Chances are that higher income earner is going to be running into cap problems around how much money they can have in super, and importantly, tax-free pensions. The whole benefit of putting money into super is to get a tax-free pension from that money once you're retired. Now, if you're hitting or you're bumping up against these caps that exist, it's currently $1.7 million. If you're bumping up against that cap, it's not great from a tax planning or an evening out point of view. So what we want to do is do something about that now, be proactive about that now. We're splitting money from one account to another to try and even out the balances before the contributions are more evenly spread and then going up. And ideally, you're getting both members of that couple are capping out on their tax-free pensions. The last part in there is you'll see that point about the high growth allocation. So you might not already, people in this space might not already be invested terribly aggressively. There's a conversation that we have around that, but often tweaking the growth allocation is appropriate. Now, I'm going to pause there for a second. If anyone's got any questions as I'm running through this, just drop them into the questions box there. I'll come back at the end. I tend to get a bit distracted if I'm answering questions and coming backwards and forwards, but drop them in there, whatever platform you might be watching this on, and I'll come back. I'll circle back at the end to go through it. One thing that I should also mention at this point is please don't go out and act on any of this. I don't know who's watching this. I don't know your personal circumstances. This is not personal financial advice. If any of this is of interest to you or ringing any bells or ticking any boxes for you, please reach out to a financial advisor that can help you. I'm willing to help. There's plenty of others like me. You may know someone. You might be in contact with someone. Great. Seek some advice. Don't just take my 10 or 15 minute live stream here as gospel and go out and race off and put any of this stuff into place. So super, once we've maximized the contributions going forward, maximized the contributions going backwards, maybe tweaked the growth, there's not that much more we're doing with super. It's kind of set, forget, keep working, keep putting the money into super and building that balance up. Next thing is investment property. So a lot of clients that I've come across in this space, a lot of them actually already have investment properties, which is great. I'm all for it. I'm not all for buying one investment property, buying another investment property, buying another one and buying another one. I think the risks associated with that level of borrowing are not necessary for most people, but I'm all for buying and investment property. In this space, we're more guided by an individual's appetite. Some people are really hesitant towards borrowing money. Some people are all for it. It'll depend on which side you sit. But importantly, if we are going down this track, we want to get the borrowing right. So this is where a lot of the strategic advice comes in. Saying before, often this demographic or this profile of a client will have a lot of money sitting in an offset account. It's not a great tax strategy to take a couple of $100,000 from your offset account and put that as a deposit on an investment property and go forward from there. What we want to do is work with your mortgage broker to restructure things so that it's most tax effective for you when you're making that investment property purchase. The most typical way that we're doing that is, say you've got you've got this lump of money sitting in your offset account. Rather than pulling cash to buy the investment property, we want to switch that around. So we go with your mortgage broker back to the bank, pay a lump sum off your mortgage, refinance it, and pull that money back out again. So you're putting money into your mortgage, doing a bit of a refinance, pulling that money back out again. When you're pulling that money back out again, now all of a sudden that's borrowed money that you're taking out rather than cash. It's not cash in your bank account. You're taking borrowed money and you're using that to put down as the deposit on the investment property, then borrowing the rest from there. And so your debt is the same as if you took a couple of $100,000 of cash and put it over here to buy the investment property. Your net debt is the same. There's no extra borrowing, but your borrowing is better structured for tax purposes when you're buying that investment property. So if you are going down that track, you want to make sure that you're doing things well from a debt structuring point of view. Investing into property can be fantastic. It can also be horrible, just as investing in the share market can be fantastic, just as investing in the share market can be horrible. So no one is typically better than others. But if you are going down this track, you want to make sure that the debt particularly is structured appropriately and you're maximizing your deductions as much as you can. Final point on that is I'm always recommending the services of a buyer's advocate in this space. Investment properties is not something that we recommend, go and buy number 2 Smith Street where me, the financial advisor, is getting involved in. Here is the structure, the debt strategy and the cash flow and how that's all coming together. The acquisition of the individual asset, we refer out to other experts. Then the next bit is investing into share markets. So once super's dealt with, so you've settled into the family home, just kind of a recap, settled into the family home, mortgage is well and truly under control, there's a fair bit of surplus cash flow. What are we doing with that? First, we're tweaking super, maximizing contributions going forward, maximizing contributions going backwards, looking at the mix of your investments, possibly entertaining the idea of buying an investment property in that second piece. Then the third one here is about regularly investing into share markets. Now, the important point here is that it's regularly investing into share markets. Investing into share markets isn't buying 10 grand of this thing and hoping for the best, and then 6 months later buying 10 grand of this one and a little bit of this one, a little bit of that one. What we want to do is have a process and a procedure around a regular, monthly, often installment that's being contributed towards share markets. So I'll start with a lump sum of money. If the mortgage is completely fully offset and there's extra money in the cash account, maybe we're taking money from the bank account. Possibly for those that have an appetite for it, it might actually be borrowed money. So back to this example of extracting equity, so paying off your mortgage and re-borrowing. We might be doing that same strategy for shares for some people that have an appetite for it. I'm okay to do that and recommend that for those that are comfortable with it. But we're starting with a lump sum, adding a regular contribution thereafter, and then possibly matching that contribution with borrowed money. So some of the strategy that we've implemented is maybe taking $150,000 as an equity position to begin with from borrowed against the house, buy some shares, adding a regular contribution every month thereafter, $1,000, $2,000, $5,000. It's going to depend on the individual and that household, but adding some regular amount of your own cash flow towards it, possibly matching that with some borrowing. Then we need to look at the ownership structure. So the strategy is investing into share markets and regularly doing that, but the ownership matters. So sometimes we might be owning those shares personally if there's a big discrepancy in tax rates between two members of a household. If there's only one person, there's not much that we can do there. But maybe that's owning it personally. Maybe that's owning it through a family trust. Maybe that's using some other structure like an investment bond. That's going to depend on individual circumstances, but there's some structuring advice there. The big advantage of going down this strategy of this kind of regular investing into share markets is it's incredibly flexible. You can dial it up, you can dial it down. If you're taking an extended period off work, if you want to take 6 months to travel overseas when we're finally allowed to, maybe you might switch this thing off. So it's not as if you've got the bank, like with the investment property, you've got the bank demanding that you make the loan repayments on your mortgage. This kind of strategy here, you can dial it up, you can dial it down. If you get a bonus that comes through, a lump sum bonus that comes through, you can add that into here as a one-off deposit. It's really flexible, and that's the major advantage of this. Then the last one here is to say, if we fast forward, we're getting closer to age 60, what do we do next? So the next part of the strategy, and this is often 10 to 15 years into the future from the initial advice that we're doing, is with this share portfolio that we're building here. Ideally, at some point, we want to actually start to transition that towards super. Ideally, you're heading towards retirement at age 60, when most people now will be able to access their super. And most of your investments are in super to benefit from the tax-free earnings on the other side. So we put in place some plans. It's as people are getting closer to age 60 to move those shares into super. So we need to be mindful of CGT, capital gains tax, so some strategies around that, trying to minimise tax as much as we can, and then also some strategy to repay the debt. So if with that investing into the share market strategy, there's been an overlay of borrowed money to kind of amplify things, if it's possible. We need to have a strategy around repaying that debt. You don't want to go into retirement holding that debt there, so that has to be paid off some way, somehow. There's a whole range of different strategies. If you've got an SMSF, there's an even bigger range of strategies that you can do there. But we need to be, that's kind of the next step. There's the building up phase, then there's the transition to move those assets across to support retirement, and then there's the moving into retirement as the third part. So that's it for the slides. There's a whole lot, of extra stuff that we tend to go through here. What I've concentrated on is the what's next, things like insurances and estate planning and cash flow. There's a whole range of different things there, but I've narrowed this down to a pretty tight profile, pretty tight demographic of client, often early 40s. As I said, mortgage well and truly under control, kids settled into school, no major plans to move, that house upgrade or renovations, whatever it is, are done. It's what's next. How do we proactively use the position that you're in to build those assets? Because whilst just working and contributing to super will likely get you a fair way there, for those household incomes of 300,000 and beyond, it's probably not going to be enough. So there's some of the strategies that we've been implementing. Thank you for those that have kind of stuck with me through this. I'll wrap it up now. The recording will be on LinkedIn. It'll be on my Facebook page and YouTube. If you want to catch it again later on, I'll probably put the audio out onto my podcast. Not that I've done that for a while. It doesn't look like there's any questions there. I'll hang around online for a little while afterwards. If you wanted to message me something personally, by all means, you can do so. But thank you for joining me. Simon, you were there on Facebook. Don't know if you're still there. Andrew, if you managed to stay right to the end, thank you. 40 LinkedIn user, that's Glenn, I think. That's Stephen. Rocco, Mina, hi to you. Haven't spoken to you for a little while. Hope you're going all right, Mina. Life's a little bit different now for both of us, now that restrictions have eased both in New South Wales and Victoria. Stephen there. Andrew, that was you. I can see at the end. You stuck with me. Chat to you soon. And Glenn, so thanks everyone. Tommy, hey, good to see you there as well. Thanks everyone. I'll wrap it up there. If you've got any questions, you can drop them into the questions wherever you might be watching. I'll respond to them there, or send me a message. Happy to help, and enjoy your evening. Bye.